What started as a simple urban exploration video in an abandoned hospital became the night I realized some places are abandoned for reasons that have nothing to do with time or decay. Sometimes they're abandoned because the people who use them now don't want to be found. And sometimes, those people aren't the only ones you need to worry about. This happened to me and my buddy Kai about 3 months ago in Detroit. We were doing this urban exploration thing for YouTube, nothing fancy, just walking around old buildings with a camera. Kai had this idea about filming the old Riverside Municipal Hospital that closed down in 2019. The place had been empty for years, and we figured it'd be perfect content. I remember stopping at a gas station before we went in. The cashier was this old guy who kept staring at us when we bought batteries and energy drinks. He asked where we were headed, and when Kai mentioned the hospital, the guy just shook his head and muttered something about kids these days. Weird, but whatever. We got there around sunset. The hospital was this massive brick building with boards over most windows. Some of the boards had fallen off, though, which made getting inside easier. The front entrance was chained shut, but there was a side door that someone had already pried open. Classic urban explorer route. The smell hit us right away. Bleach mixed with something else, like old cigarettes, or maybe something burning. Kai made a joke about hospital cleaning supplies, still lingering after all these years. I laughed, but honestly, it smelled too fresh for that. We started filming in the main lobby. Broken glass everywhere, graffiti on the walls, the usual abandoned building stuff. My phone kept losing signal, which was annoying because I wanted to post some clips on Instagram. The emergency lighting was still working somehow, casting these weird shadows down the hallways. That's when we heard it. A baby crying. Kai stopped mid-sentence while he was talking to the camera. We both just stood there listening. It was definitely a baby, coming from somewhere deeper in the building, maybe the second floor. Someone's got to be squatting here, Kai said. Made sense. Detroit has tons of people living in abandoned buildings. We figured we'd avoid that area and film somewhere else. But the crying kept going and going for like 20 minutes straight. Dude, that baby sounds distressed, I said. Kai agreed. We're not heartless. If there was a baby in trouble, we had to check it out. We followed the sound upstairs. The stairwell was worse than the lobby. Trash piled up on the landings, and someone had spray painted "Stay Out" on the wall. The crying was getting louder. On the second floor, we found the source. There was this alcove that used to be a patient room, but someone had hung blankets across the doorway like curtains. Behind the blankets, we could see dim light and hear voices talking quietly. Kai called out, "Hey, is everything okay in there?" We heard crying. The voices stopped. Then this woman peeked through the blankets. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. Behind her, we could see a makeshift bed and an actual crib with a baby in it. "You need to leave," she said. "Right now." There was a man with her too. He came to the curtain opening, and his eyes were darting around nervously. "Did anyone see you come in? Were you followed?" We told them no. We were just filming. That seemed to make them even more anxious. "Look," the woman said. "We'll give you whatever you want. Food, money, anything. Just pretend you never saw us and don't tell anyone we're here." The desperation in her voice was scary. These weren't just homeless people. They were hiding from something. The man explained quickly. They'd escaped from some trafficking situation and had been living in the hospital for weeks. The people looking for us, they check all the shelters, all the obvious places. Nobody comes here. We assured them we wouldn't say anything. Hell, we weren't even going to use this footage. But as we were leaving their little setup, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The hallway leading away from their room had dark stains on the floor. Not old water-damage stains, fresh-looking blood. And there were scuff marks on the walls like someone had been dragged. "Has anyone else been coming around here?" I asked. The woman and man exchanged looks. "Sometimes we hear fighting downstairs at night," she admitted. "People arguing, sometimes screaming. That's when we decided to get the fuck out." But as we headed back toward the stairs, Kai grabbed my arm. He pointed down the hallway toward what used to be the nurse's station. One of the windows there wasn't boarded up. It was wide open, and there was a fresh boot print in the dust on the windowsill. Someone had come in recently, maybe while we were upstairs. My phone still had no signal, so we couldn't call for help even if we wanted to. We tried to move quietly back toward the exit, but the old hospital floors creaked with every step. Then we heard voices coming from the first floor. Male voices, talking in hushed tones. We froze. The couple upstairs had been so scared of someone finding them. What if these were the people they were hiding from? Kai motioned for us to go down the back stairwell instead of the main one. We crept through the halls, trying to avoid the areas where we could hear the voices. My heart was pounding so loud, I was sure everyone in the building could hear it. As we passed what looked like an old supply closet, I noticed the door was slightly open. Inside, someone had carved words into the wooden doorframe. Fresh carving, the wood still light-colored. It said, "March 15th, don't bring them back." That was only 2 weeks ago. We finally made it to the side exit we'd used to get in. The voices were still echoing from somewhere in the building, but they seemed to be moving away from us. We slipped out and ran to Kai's car. On the drive home, we tried calling the police to report the couple with the baby, but every time we dialed 911, the call wouldn't go through. We found out later that someone had stripped all the copper wiring from the hospital's electrical systems, including the phone lines in that area. We never went back to finish filming. Kai deleted all the footage we'd gotten that night. But sometimes I wonder about that couple and their baby. Did they get away? And those voices we heard downstairs, were they looking for the family hiding upstairs? Or were they there for some other reason? The worst part is, I drive past that hospital sometimes on my way to work, and I've started noticing things. Cars parked nearby that don't belong to construction crews. Lights in windows that should be empty. I think that place isn't as abandoned as everyone believes, and the people using it now don't want visitors. I still have nightmares about that message carved in the closet door. Don't bring them back. Bring who back? And back from where? I guess some questions are better left unanswered. This happened about 2 years ago when I was living in Columbus, Ohio. I'm not really good at telling stories, but people keep asking me about it. So here it is. My buddy Marcus and I were really into urban exploration back then. You know, checking out old buildings and taking photos. Nothing crazy, just looking for cool shots for Instagram. Marcus had this old Polaroid camera he got from his grandpa, and I used my phone mostly. We weren't professionals or anything. We heard about this abandoned elementary school on the south side of town. Fairview Elementary, I think it was called. The building had been empty for maybe 6 years after budget cuts closed it down. Marcus found out about it from some forum online where people post about these places. It was a Saturday afternoon in October. I remember because my sister had asked me to help her move that day, but I totally forgot until she called me while we were already at the school. I felt bad about it later. The place looked normal from the outside. Red brick, playground equipment still there but all rusted. Someone had boarded up most of the windows, but a few were broken. The parking lot had weeds growing through the cracks. Marcus brought bolt cutters because we figured we'd need them for a chain or something. We walked around the building first, just checking it out. The back door had this loose board over it. Marcus pulled it off easy, and the door was unlocked. That should have been our first clue that something was weird, but we were excited to get inside. The hallways smelled like old books and cleaning supplies. Our footsteps echoed really loud. Most classrooms were completely empty, just bare walls and floors. The cafeteria still had those long tables, but they were all pushed to one side. Marcus took some photos there. Then we found this one classroom that was different. Room 108, I remember the number because it was painted in big letters on the door. When we opened it, everything was still there. Desks in rows, pencils and papers scattered around, a calendar on the wall. The date on the calendar was from last week, not 6 years ago. "That's weird," Marcus said, walking over to look at the calendar closer. "Why would this be here?" I picked up one of the papers from a desk. It was math homework, 3rd grade level. The name at the top said Jessica in kid handwriting. The paper looked fresh, not old and yellowed like you'd expect. We took some photos and moved on. Down the hall, we found the principal's office. The door was open, and there were filing cabinets still full of papers. Marcus found a janitor's logbook on the desk. The last entry was from 2018, talking about locking up the building for good. But that didn't make sense with the classroom we just saw. We kept exploring. The gym was at the back of the building, and when we got there, I noticed something that made my stomach feel funny. There was new ductwork hanging from the ceiling, shiny metal pipes that definitely weren't 6 years old. And the smell. It was like diesel fuel mixed with something else I couldn't place. Marcus was taking pictures of the basketball hoops when I heard a sound, like footsteps, but really quiet. I grabbed his arm. "Did you hear that?" He stopped and listened. Nothing. But I swear I heard something. We decided to check out the area behind the gym. There was a hallway back there that we almost missed. It was darker than the rest of the building, and when we turned on our phone flashlights, what we saw didn't make any sense. Someone was living there. Not just passing through, actually living. There were sleeping bags lined up against the wall, maybe 8 or 10 of them, small ones, like for kids. Boxes of baby formula were stacked in the corner. Little uniforms hanging from hooks on the wall, the kind kids wear at private schools. Marcus whispered, "What the hell is this place?" I found a binder on a folding table. It was full of papers, ID cards, birth certificates, stuff like that. But they all looked fake. The photos were of kids, different kids, but some of the names were the same. My hands were shaking as I flipped through it. That's when we heard voices. Quiet talking coming from somewhere deeper in the building. We both froze. The voices were getting closer. I grabbed Marcus and we ducked behind some boxes. 2 adults walked past us, talking in low voices about keeping the kids quiet and the next pickup. They didn't see us, thank God. But one of them mentioned the gym and something about lessons tonight. We waited until they were gone, then got out of there as fast as we could. But as we were leaving through the back door, this little girl appeared out of nowhere. Maybe 7 years old, wearing one of those uniforms we saw hanging up. She looked scared and walked up to us. In this tiny voice, she said, "Are you here for pickup too?" Marcus and I just stared at each other. I didn't know what to say. Then she whispered, we're not supposed to talk to strangers. They punish us if we talk. She pointed back toward the gym area. That's where we have lessons. At night, we have to be very quiet. Before we could say anything else, she ran back inside. We stood there for maybe 30 seconds, not knowing what to do. Then we heard adult voices calling for her, and we ran to Marcus's car. I couldn't sleep that night. All I kept thinking about was that little girl and what she said about being punished, and those sleeping bags, and the fake IDs. The next day, I called the police tip line. I didn't give my name, just told them about the abandoned school and what we found. I made Marcus promise not to post any of the photos online. About a week later, I drove past the school again. There were utility company trucks there and police cars. I parked down the street and watched them bring out boxes of stuff. Later that evening, the news reported that authorities had discovered an illegal childcare operation at the old school building, but that wasn't the whole story. A friend of mine who works dispatch told me they found hidden rooms built into the crawl spaces under the building. Rooms that weren't on any of the original building plans. She said there were signs that way more kids had been through there than what they found that day. The official reports called it an unlicensed daycare situation. Some adults got arrested for operating without permits and tax evasion, but I know what we saw was bigger than that. Those fake IDs, the way that little girl talked about being punished for talking, the sleeping bags hidden away from everything else. I still think about it sometimes, especially when I can't sleep. I keep wondering about all those kids and where they ended up. And sometimes I have this dream where I'm back in that hallway, and I open one of the storage closets we didn't check. Inside, there are rows and rows of tiny shoes, all lined up perfectly, like they're waiting for their owners to come back. Marcus and I don't do urban exploration anymore. Some places are abandoned for good reasons, and some secrets should stay buried. But I still drive past that school sometimes, just to make sure it stays empty. The building's been torn down now. They built a parking lot where it used to be. But I swear, sometimes when I drive by at night, I can still smell that diesel fuel smell drifting across the street. This happened to me and my buddy Garrett about 6 months ago in Detroit. I still get weird about it sometimes. Like, I'll be walking downtown and see some random door that looks like nobody owns it, and I get that feeling again. You know what I mean? Anyway, me and Garrett were doing this urban exploration thing. Not like breaking into places or anything crazy, just checking out old buildings that were going to get torn down. Detroit's got tons of them. We had this whole list of places the city was planning to demolish, and we wanted to see them before they were gone forever. The building we picked that day was this old municipal office on Jefferson Avenue. Used to be where they kept city records back in the 80s or something. Been empty for like 15 years. The demolition crews were supposed to start the next week. We parked behind the building around noon. Garrett brought his camera. I had my flashlight. The place looked normal enough from outside. Broken windows, some graffiti, weeds growing through the parking lot cracks. Nothing special. That's when Garrett spotted the manhole cover. It was maybe 20 feet from the building's back entrance. Not unusual or anything, but Garrett got curious. He's always been like that. In high school, he was the guy who had to check what was behind every door we walked past. "Dude, you think this connects to the building?" he asked. I told him probably not. City sewers usually run under streets, not parking lots. But Garrett was already trying to pry the cover up with this little crowbar he keeps in his backpack. Don't ask me why he carries that thing around. The cover came up easier than we expected, like someone had been using it recently. The ladder going down looked solid, not all rusty like you'd expect. Garrett shined his phone light down there. "It's not a sewer," he said. "Looks like some kind of tunnel." I really didn't want to go down there. My mom always told me never to go in storm drains or anything like that. But Garrett was already climbing down, and I wasn't going to let him go alone. The tunnel was about 6 feet high, just wide enough for 2 people. Concrete walls, metal pipes running along the ceiling. It smelled weird down there. Not like sewage, more like, I don't know, like a basement that's been closed up too long. We followed the tunnel for maybe 50 yards. My flashlight kept catching these metal brackets on the walls, like someone had run cables through there at some point. The tunnel curved to the right, and that's where we found the door. Heavy metal door, painted gray. Had one of those industrial handles you have to push down. No signs, no numbers, nothing. Garrett tried the handle. It opened. Behind the door was this room that definitely wasn't on any city demolition maps. Low ceiling, maybe 7 feet. Concrete floor, fluorescent lights hanging from chains. But here's the thing that made my skin crawl. The lights were on. Someone had been paying the electric bill. The room was maybe 30 by 20 feet. Along one wall, these military-style wooden crates were stacked up. Green paint, stenciled numbers. They looked old, but well-maintained. In the center of the room was this folding table with a whiteboard propped up on it. The whiteboard had this grid drawn on it, times and locations. Stuff like bus depot 11:30 p.m. and park entrance 2:15 a.m. There were initials next to each entry. The handwriting was neat, like someone who takes their job seriously. On the floor next to the table was this battery bank setup. Garrett was taking pictures with his phone, but I kept looking at that whiteboard. The dates were recent, like within the last 2 weeks. "We should go," I told him. But he was already walking toward another door at the far end of the room. This one was open, leading to what looked like a hallway. The hallway had 3 doors. 2 were closed. One was cracked open about 6 inches. Through the crack, I could see rows of metal cots, like in a military barracks or something. Garrett pushed the door open wider. The room was bigger than the first one, maybe 40 cots arranged in neat rows. At the far end was a wall covered with radio equipment. Not old ham radio stuff, professional-looking gear with digital displays and multiple antennas. Most of the radios were turned on, static and occasional voices coming through. I recognized some of the frequencies. Local police, fire department, city maintenance crews. Someone was monitoring everything. On a desk next to the radios was a stack of monitors showing black and white video feeds. I counted 8 screens. They showed different locations around the city. The entrance to Hart Plaza, the bus station on Congress Street, a couple of parks I recognized. Real-time surveillance. That's when we heard footsteps in the tunnel behind us. We both froze. The footsteps were slow, careful, like someone trying not to make noise but not quite succeeding. Garrett grabbed my arm and pointed to another door we hadn't noticed. This one led to what looked like a supply closet. We squeezed inside and pulled the door almost shut, leaving just enough gap to see through. 2 people came into the room. A woman in her 40s wearing a postal service uniform and a younger guy in coveralls. They didn't look like criminals or anything, just normal people. The woman went straight to the radios and started adjusting dials. The guy checked something on a clipboard, then walked over to one of the monitors. "Next pickup is scheduled for midnight," the woman said. "Detroit Metro Airport, departures level." The guy nodded. "How many this time?" 4. 3 adults, 1 minor. The client wants them in Chicago by morning. I felt sick. They were talking about people like cargo. The guy walked over to a cabinet we hadn't seen and pulled out a box of surgical masks. Same protocol? Yeah. Masks, sedatives if they resist. Tell them they'll be somewhere better by tomorrow night. I wanted to run right then, but Garrett grabbed my wrist and shook his head. We were trapped until they left. The woman made some notes on the whiteboard, adding new times to the grid. The guy checked the battery levels and adjusted something on one of the monitors. They were there for maybe 10 minutes. Professional, efficient. Like this was just another day at the office. After they left, we waited another 5 minutes before moving. Then we got the hell out of there as fast as we could. I didn't sleep that night. Kept thinking about that room, those cots, the way they talked about moving people around like packages. The next day, I called this investigative journalist I'd read about who covers human trafficking cases. Told her everything. She asked for the exact location, which I gave her. 2 days later, the story broke in the Detroit Free Press. Underground network dismantled in downtown Detroit. The article mentioned the bunker being cleared out, several arrests made. But it also said the investigation was ongoing. That's when my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, pulled me aside. She's lived in my building for 30 years, sees everything that happens on our block. She told me she'd noticed strange activity around a different building 3 streets over. People coming and going at weird hours, vehicles with tinted windows. They just move, she said, like they were never there. Now I walk different routes to work, avoid certain streets, certain buildings. Detroit has thousands of abandoned structures, basements, tunnels that nobody keeps track of. Sometimes I see doors that look like nobody owns them. No address numbers, no business signs. Just doors that seem to exist in spaces between other places. And I wonder what's behind them. The thing that really bothers me? We probably walked past that manhole cover a dozen times before. It was always there, hiding in plain sight. Makes you think about what else is right under your feet.